gosh.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I've been wanting to shoot this series for a long time, so I apologize. This is a much overdue series, and this is me breaking down my rods and what makes them different. And that is the Duckett Fishing Jacob Warder Signature Series rod, like I have one right here. This is the one rod right here in my hand. If I was going to recommend one rod for a beginner angler, or if you wanted to get one rod in my series to try out, to start out, this is like the jack of all trades, if you will. It's my 7-foot medium heavy action rod, and I'm going to break down some of the things that make this rod different. And I'm not going to do this in every single video because I want to just sort of talk about some of the things that I decided to pick out of this rod, that really, in every single rod in my series, has a lot of the same setup. And first off, if you look at the rod cosmetically, it is it's me. Red, white, and blue. I love the red outlines of it. The EVA foam, that personally for me has always been my choice, and as I've went from cork and back to EVA, and it just, for me, the look of it, the feel of it is what I love. Now, as far as guides, going down to the guides, when I chose what guides I was going to use on this particular rod and every rod that I have Keegan's on them. These are a smaller guide than a traditional guide, but it's not a micro guide. So it's sort of an in-between, and that's what personally was worked for me over the years. I feel like I could get the best out of the guides, not having too much weight as far as a traditional size, but also the micro guide just wasn't for me, and that's on every rod anyway. There is some advantages to it, but overall that's what I chose. On all of my casting rods, I have a little clip right here in the front. That's where I have my hook hanger. That is what I love to have, that little hook hanger right there. And I've moved things around over the years. I've had different rods, and that's what's worked best for me, just clipping it right there. Guys do, and I will do this from time to time, putting something like that, on the front of your reel. Issue with that is you can nick your line, and I've done it before. So ideally, keeping it right there, you're going to get a little hook rash from maybe in your rod box of that having it there. But in the day, it's not going to structurally hurt the rod or anything like that. Going down into the actual reel seat, this is a very important part of this rod, what makes it really mine. I don't like a foregrip. I want to have a direct connect, and I palm my reel. And what I mean by that is, I'll show you. I pull my reels very much like that. I palm them. So I have a connection not only to the blank with my fingers up here as I touch it on the blank there, but then also in the split reel seat of a direct connection to the blank. That's really important when you're fishing offshore, deeper water, subtle bites, wintertime. That is what I would suggest. That's what works for me, and it just gives me that little bit more feel. The issue with rods in general these days, I feel like everybody's so worried about having that super sensitive, like perfect, oh, I want to feel everything. And actually, a lot of times, that can be the worst thing you can have happen. In a couple rods in my series, I wanted the sensitivity to be lesser than, because your action time, when you can feel everything, is not, you end up pulling the bait out of the fish's mouth several times. So that is important. Certain particular techniques, especially vibrating jigs, even a spinnerbait, you do not want to have, you want them fish to get that bait. And if you can feel it so well, a lot of times when they tick it and you don't let them load up, you'll end up losing those fish. That's, I feel like sometimes is the important part of having a rod that loads up, having the right action. Now the 7-foot medium heavy, I'm going to talk about what I have on this particular rod, what I use it for. Right here I have the spinnerbait. This is the exact spinnerbait that I won Lake Eufaula, the BPT event on Lake Eufaula last year. The exact one. I just tied it on. It was right here hanging on that trophy. And I always have a little bit of memorabilia around. And you can't necessarily see it. Maybe you can. There's some teeth marks on him right there. I can throw on this 7-foot medium heavy action rod, I can throw a big 1 ounce spinnerbait. Now, if you're trying to get distance, I would go to my 7.3 medium heavy. But the reason why I like throwing a spinnerbait on my 7-foot is because I can impart a lot of action into the bait. And what I mean by that is that I slow roll this spinnerbait, or if I'm throwing a 3/8 or a half, I will be able to slowly sort of twitch my rod, be able to do that, and allows me a little more freedom to maybe make those little quick turns and twitches that can make those fish to react on a spinnerbait just like that. Along with that, this is sort of my everything rod. My top water rod, if there's one rod in my series, this is my top water rod. My walking baits, whether it's my 13 fishing stuff, whether it's my poppy pop fish, a little popper, whether it's a skitter walk, whatever it is, I can throw. I don't throw super small poppers on this bait. So meaning like a small skitter pop, I don't throw it. When it's super light, I don't throw it on this. I throw it on a different rod. So, but everything else, buzz bait, I will throw it on this setup. Now, the other thing is like a smaller plopping style bait, I throw it on this setup. It really just depends on if you're trying to get distance. The only time I'm going to go up in size of rod is all about distance. And so 7-foot is my standard rod size of it's all around. If there's one rod, light Texas rigs, this is what I'm going to throw. Maybe like a Cinco or like a lunker log, like stick baits in general. That's what I'll throw. And then also I use this rod for when I'm skipping underneath boat docks. And what I mean by that is when I'm skipping a vibrating jig, a lot of times I do throw that a lot around boat docks. And so if I'm trying to make it easier on myself, and sometimes if it's big ones, I want to have a little bit more leverage, and I'll go to my 7.3 medium heavy. But if you're just learning how to skip, a 7-footer is going to be a lot easier than it is with a 7.3 or 7.6. You're going to have a little bit easier to roll cast, and that's why I'll switch it over. Or if I'm having an issue for some reason, I'm pulling it out of this fish's mouth with a vibrating jig, which happens, trust me, I will go with this 7-foot medium heavy action rod over my 7.3, just because I feel like the reaction time, I have a little bit less rod, and that rod just allows it to load up. For me, it's worked well on that side of things. So really, for about everything that I do, the only thing that I would not recommend, even necessarily like a lipless crankbait, small lipless crankbaits, I will still throw this rod right here, like a 1/2 ounce lipless. I could throw that. So if you're looking for one rod in my series that is probably the best all around, this is the rod for you. Most of my rods are very parabolic. There's a few that are different actions for specific reasons, and I'll go into that later, but most of my rods are parabolic because that is what personally for me, I've seen the best value. And what I mean by that is I just don't tend to lose many fish on a parabolic rod for so many different applications. There's just a couple that I use specifically when I have fast tips, but for the overall best well-rounded rod, I throw my finesse swim baits on this rod. So little Largo shads, a 4-inch swim bait, 10-pound line, that's the rod I use, jigging spoons, really just about everything I can throw on this thing right here. And that's why I love it so much. I mean, it's probably the #1 rod I have the most rods of in my series because I use it for everything. So if you're looking to pick up one of my rods, the 7-foot medium heavy is a bad dude. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is definitely going to be a lot of fun going through the full series of my rods, and look for the next rod that drops, an explanation of that next week.